Okay, welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. Joined today by Russell Thompson, formerly of LMA and currently a strategic advisor with his own firm, Ascentia Advisory. How are you?
Good. Good morning, Dualta. Yeah, it's a nice sunny day here in London.
Yeah, it's a nice sunny day here in Spain as well. So, all good on that front. So London, you've been in the London recruitment market since what year?
1994, 30 years this year. I
Wow.
haven't had a party actually. I need to, well, maybe, don't know whether I should be celebrating or commiserating, but yeah, it's 30 years.
So 30 years, 94, bring me back in that time machine. The 90s were quite buoyant.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
start
it's a different
what
landscape,
type of
Jules.
recruitment did you start in?
I started off as an investment banking recruiter, so recruiting in London within a sector actually that doesn't really exist anymore. It's called operations, and lots of big banks used to have a lot of people processing trades on behalf of their traders. And I spent my life recruiting those kinds of people. But these days, that's all been offshored, and those roles exist in India and low cost centres. But yeah, and I quit. I took to recruitment like a duck to water. I tried to be an accountant, and I was not very good at that. And then I tried to actually to be a banker, and I wasn't very good at that either. And I'm actually one of the few people in the industry that you'll meet that actually thought about recruitment as a career rather than the usual story of falling into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I suppose like jobs are fascinating and what people do, like that the fact that people identify with what they do for a living and like you can really get into it. I suppose I tried to get into it when I finished my undergrad, and then
Yeah,
I couldn't land a job in recruitment. I think it was a bit rough
right.
around the edges. And then I got into it when I was 27. I fell into it then. I was
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I wish I had
It's
had
funny.
about 6 more years at this.
I still remember my first ever day actually. And I knew, having been in two roles that I was miserable in and didn't like at all, I knew that from that first day, I knew I found I guess, my calling, for want of a better word, and I knew that recruitment was going to be the career for me. I loved it from the start, and I guess I do still love it now, but it's obviously very, very different now to what it was back then in the 90s.
So your big success story was with LMA. Walk me
Yeah,
through the early stages. How did the business come about? What like
yeah,
walk us through because that was like what was it, 15 years with them?
yeah. That was the biggest chunk of my career actually, Jules, and it was probably by far the most successful and happiest of my working life. I'd spent 6 years working for the Impellum Group, and one of the business that I started in was actually acquired by Pelham, and I achieved um, significant success fairly early in that environment. I became a director of the Impellum Group and worked for the most amazing lady called Julia Robertson, who's subsequently just left Impellum after all those years. But I learned so much from her, and she taught me how to operate within I guess, within a corporate world, and being a late 20s good recruiter, learning his trade. She taught me a lot about how to run a business, and it was actually through her counsel that I thought, I had that itch that many people do. You get to the early 30s. I didn't have any responsibilities in terms of kids or anything like that at the time, and I thought, I want to do this on my own. And so Empresaria, it's still in existence actually. They were a group, and I was introduced to Miles Hunt, who's the guy that set Empresaria up, who I'm still in touch with now actually, and that's when LMA was born. And we wind forward from 2005 to 2020 when I exited, and it was I created something really, really special.
Yeah, nice. So So did you join an already funded business? What were the early
Well,
days?
Empresario, so they backed entrepreneurs. So their model was very much around building a decentralized group that it was listed on AIM. So that
Yeah,
they're a significant company, but they firmly believed in embracing entrepreneurial spirit, giving ownership to the MDs, and obviously the MD, as an MD, we had to operate within the parameters of a budget, but we were really given autonomy to build and drive the business, essentially as if it were our own. And so for me at that time, that provided me with, I didn't have to set something up for my bedroom.
yeah. You got a nice
So
salary to start,
I
and
had financial support, yeah. But with
yeah,
that, and so it provided me with a foundation, yeah.
yeah.
And
So,
yeah, and I thrived in that environment.
uh, if you could go back, would you have just tried to set it all up yourself, or are you glad you actually were part of a bigger machine?
That's a really good question. If I probably would have done it on my own. If I
No,
had the,
knowing what you know now.
yeah, knowing what I know now, Jules, so I think, you always have well, some people don't, but I had some, you always question, oh, can I, am I good enough? I was a brilliant recruiter. I was always top of all the league tables. I billed loads of money, but I had a mortgage, and I probably saw the environment Empresario provided me as a middle ground option. Whereas
Yeah.
if I knew what I know now and how, what I achieved and how, you know, I think I probably would have done that without the
Is,
support of the group and
is
found
there
and
the thing with
supported.
founders is they tend to all that support stuff and all the benefits, it comes quite early in that journey where
Yeah,
you're like, this is great, all this is taken care of. And then when you've acquired that knowledge, and then you realize, oh, actually, I could have third partied some of this.
yeah.
Uh, it, it's a tricky one to know it. But is there anything you could have done along that journey to renegotiate to make sure that your ultimate event would have been more profitable for you?
No, it was quite a set formula they had. So it
Yeah.
was, and actually, I wasn't unhappy with my arrangement actually. So,
Mm.
because I was building something where, the profitability was becoming fairly significant. And although I'm very driven and motivated, and I've always been absolutely laser focused on built on growth, and and being quite, not aggressive is the wrong word, but being really pushing myself to keep going and going and going. I didn't ever think, um, I never wished I was in a different world because I was achieving success, and I knew that my end result would have been lucrative,
Yeah.
whether I got to 500,000 EBIT or a million EBIT or 2 million EBIT. It's just a question of how big that the final number is, right?
And you got it up to about 90 heads, did you?
Yeah, 85. Our biggest headcount was in 2018 was actually a really great year for my business. That was 2 years before I left, and I think we were about 60, 65 in London. That was the year we won the best companies. Actually, one of my biggest achievements actually was winning. We entered the best companies to work for, the Sunday Times thing, and you have to be over 50 people to enter. And so we were
Yeah.
only what we were about 60 at the time. Anyway, we got second place, like as a novice, and so we were proud to win that. That was 2018. So we had 60 odd in London, and I think 2025 in Singapore. So I was going quite backwards and forwards quite a bit to Asia. I built that from nothing, and that business started in 2011.
Brilliant. And what would you say the keys were to your success?
Um, I created an environment and a culture where I was able to attract and retain brilliant people. And
And
I
if we
think
break down what that actually means,
that that I Led, I mean, culture comes from the top down. I'm a firm believer in that. I led with absolute transparency. I was in it with them. I worked as hard as anybody else on that floor. I listened. I created a fun environment. I know that sounds really twee, but you spend a lot of time at work, and this is all before the days of hybrid working. We were in the office, for long hours, and wanted everyone to have fun when they were there. And so we did a lot around employee engagement. We did a lot around giving back. We had a really strong CSR program where we were raising significant money. We did volunteering. People were paid well, so they're happy with their comp. And we were a growth business, and people wanted to be part of something exciting. It was a business they felt they could hang their hat on because they knew what was going on. I was really open with the numbers. I was open with how, if we had a really awful month, I'd tell them that. They knew how we're performing against our plan. They knew what the vision was. Everything was clear and transparent. And it meant our staff turnover, we didn't lose great billers often. So, and that's quite key. It's probably, as recruitment becomes more commoditized, that becomes less of an issue these days than it did then. But I think back in the peak of our success, it was a business that people wanted to work in. And also I created stability at the top level by providing equity opportunities for the top team as well. And that was important.
Was that via like an EMI scheme, or what did you do with
No,
that?
it was hard equity through the group, second generation. So they growth shares rather
Okay.
than, yeah.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Orca, the online recruitment coaching academy. Get access to live coaching, online courses, and playbooks from the industry's top coaches. Your entire organization can get access for less than the price of one email per day. Sign up today at trainwithorca.com. Back to the show.
And growth shares from anybody that listening is the value is already recognized at a point, and then when they come in, it's what their added value is from there that they get the payment, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Exactly that.
All right, cool. So talk to me about the growing pains of when you hit that magic point at about 13 billers, and and you stop becoming the main biller and have to
It's, yeah, that is so true. Getting over 20 people was the
15,
hardest.
15 to 22,
Yeah,
the up
it
and
was
down and up and down. Yeah.
uh, it was my biggest hurdle. It took me ages. It wasn't helped because we did most of our work at the time in between 2005 and 2010, 11, 12 was all banking, financial services, and there'll be some listeners that won't remember this, but in 2008, 2009, there was the most horrendous crash. It was the global financial crisis. And it was literally like the vacancy tap was turned off.
Yeah.
It was awful. And banking was the hardest hit. And so that was one growing pain. It was like bloody hell. I'm just getting through that without making a loss. Actually, that's another one of my, again, people say, what are your biggest achievements? Getting through 2009, breaking even, I would say was one of my biggest achievements. And interestingly, we'd done, we 2008 was like a mental year. I think we were about 300 EBIT in 2008. We were small. We were about that at that 13 people stage. We'd grown temps. I put an enormous amount of effort in building our contract base, which we took up to like close to 100 contractors in the first 3 years. And so we were lean at the time and super profitable. And then the GFC happened, and it's like I had to let people go. The only way we could get through it was cutting some cost out. And
Did you have Singapore as well at the time?
no, that was until 2011. We're only London, and then literally, Jules. So we got to January. So literally, one forward 1 year, January 2010. We were back down to like 8, 9, 10 people, something. And it was like I made reference to the tap being turned off, but the tap was turned on. I mean, we were flooded with work. So the GFC in 2009 was really deep, but really fast. And suddenly I was back fee earning because we just didn't have enough bloody people to
Yeah.
deal with all the work. And it was then that I started to, it was like we were making good money again. So I got to that 25, 30 mark within the next 3 years.
Yeah. Very good. And how did you go about identifying talent and who fitted your business?
Um, well, firstly, I've made loads and loads of mistakes, and I
Yeah.
still do. Um, there's no science behind
Yeah. Do you
hiring
know what the main
recruiters.
mistake people make? They
Well,
they look at the bottom line of what the person built
uh,
and they get excited and think about that
and that's
money in
me.
their bank account.
I get pound signs in my eyes,
Yeah.
and that is me, and I've and that I and it's so hard to because you have to protect the culture, and I've learned the hard way that no one biller is bigger than the rest of the business.
Yeah. So you didn't Eric Cantona anybody in there. Nobody got special treatment.
No, no, they really didn't actually. They probably might have done in the early days when I was probably, but I'm quite authentic, and I find it hard to pretend. And if someone's really behaving in a way that I didn't like or don't like, I find it really hard to just put up with that. So, um, yeah. So, I mean, hiring talent. Look, I used to just interview and interview. A big part of my job through those most of those years actually was bringing talent in.
Yeah.
I would do all the first interviews, and even when we got 60 people, except for the graduate hires, I'd do all the
You
first
did the first
interviews.
interviews.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why, because if I like them, we were in such a competitive market then.
Yeah, you had to
I
be
mean,
quick, right?
you had to be quick. And so if I wanted them, if I identify somebody I really wanted to progress with, I wanted them to leave my business having heard from me the plans. I wanted to get them hooked. So they'd leave and I'll be number one on their list. So I can't tell. I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds. I'd become best friends with all the rectorex. They would love recruiting for me because I'd see all their candidates. I'd have all these referral schemes. I do loads of headhunting myself. I saw it as a big part of my job.
So what was your head count when you went, you know what? I can't be the main biller here anymore. I need to focus
Probably
on
around
hiring
20,
and
about
operational.
15. Yeah, about 15, 15,
15.
20. Yeah,
Yeah. And did your life get better or worse from there?
different. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Well, yeah.
It didn't bother me that I wasn't. I still did a lot of BD, so I was
I was
still
going to ask, were you still the key point for
yeah, I'm not the key point, but I would be very client facing. We weren't big enough. I would do all the tenders. We had lots of RFPs coming through. I was the best writer back, before we had anything to help us with those types of documents. I would write them all. I would do the presentations. I would present. I would go on big pitches. So I was very client facing, even though I wasn't generating pure revenue. But I appreciate it's a really difficult transition to make for many founders of businesses because often the revenue, a big chunk of the company's revenue is coming from that one person, but you have to be brave and do it. Otherwise your business won't grow.
So you're one of the 0.3% of people who managed to successfully
Is that
exit
is that the
their
stat?
I think it's something like that. I mean, don't
Oh,
quote me on it because I'm probably lying, but the point is, it's a very small percentage of people that get to ride off into the sunset. Um, what you probably it's kind of like one of the last events of the last generation before recruitment got kind of weird,
yeah,
and now that we're post-COVID, hybrid working, offshoring, automation,
yeah,
AI battles between the people who are applying for jobs and the people on the other end,
yeah,
uh, shrinkage in TA teams, but lots of independent style TA consulting. Like the competitive landscape's changed. Um, what's it like now from an advisor perspective, and like what do you see the
yeah.
key differences?
I think that the challenges CEOs and founders are facing are just so different to anything we were experiencing. You're absolutely right about that. We were going through a period of profound change that none of us, I don't think, could have either anticipated or predicted. I think I started advising other companies about 4 or 5 months ago, so I'm very early in my advisory career. I've got 3 or 4 clients already, and the challenges they're facing are all very different, actually. But there's one consistent challenge, and that's client clients' buying behavior is changing, and if you don't move with it, you'll get stuck, and you'll get stuck very, very quickly.
In what manner is the client's behavior
Well,
changing?
we've got it's you mentioned the TA. I mean, we've got essentially a global database now, which people are in the early days of my career, Jules. So people used to talk about the strength of their database and how it works for them, how brilliant it is.
Not
Well,
just the up until 2011,
yeah,
really.
yeah. And now it's, LinkedIn is that, and it's providing organizations with access to talent that they've normally come to us for. So we have to really think long and hard around, okay, what value add? What are we able to do that they can't do themselves? And there's lots and lots of things that need to come in scope. Number one, you cannot remunerate and pay people in the same way you always have if they're doing a different kind of job. There's got to be more of a delivery. If margins are being squeezed, there's got to be a cheaper way to deliver our services to make your service more profitable. Number two, you've got to look at the parts of the market where your clients are really, really struggling, and where can you add value. I think that obviously the inch mile wide deep is
It's a
it's an
traditional way, right?
it's an old adage, but it's still as important as ever. Know your
I
market
wonder, I wonder, because I study a lot of companies and a lot of them like to say that they're that,
yeah, but
but
they're not really.
if they're not really, right, because especially when the market's on the way up, uh, if the market's on the way up, what they'll do is they'll say, we are a life science business, for example,
Yeah,
and we specialize in this and this. But if the market's on the way up, they'll then say, oh, actually, we can do all your operations jobs too. And we can do this here and we can do that. And then they build out on the way up. And then when the market crashes, they go back to going, well, we're just the specialist that does this. So I always take this with a bit of a pinch of salt with founders. And I know there still are specialist contract like that do very niche things, but do you not think that we're moving towards a place where if you do get a contact with a company and they need help with hiring, the fact that we have a ability to get to data, ability to assess who's good, who's not, surely we can recruit any of the jobs that they want without having subject matter expertise, given the tools that are out there now?
yeah, I totally get your point, and I think that very much depends on the level you're operating at as well. I think very interestingly, I keep an eye on what I think at the more junior level, yes, you can. I do think that. But I think when you're operating at more senior level, where you're perhaps in the world of search, I think you need to be focused and specialists. And the reason I say that is because, well, the search market is actually being impacted less than other parts of the market. If you look at the results of many of the listed search firms, they're holding up well. And the reason for that is, if you're recruiting a C-suite person or C-suite minus one person, you often it might be a confidential search, so you need to go to your supply chain, or you might not just trust your TA team to do a very good job of it.
Mm.
Now, in addition, so I think you can't blag that kind of service, and I think
Yeah.
that's where the opportunity is. I think you need. So I think, look, if you're recruiting 50K accountants and you're recruiting, why couldn't you recruit a health and safety officer, or why at that level, or why couldn't you recruit a paralegal or you know, an HR
And
person?
look, I appreciate it takes away from
But and I get why
your
you're saying
expert.
that. But I think the higher up the food chain you go, where the
Yeah.
real money is to be made, if I'm really honest,
Yeah.
then I think you need to be more specialist.
Yeah. How does somebody go about setting up an executive search business from scratch
Bloody
if they
hell.
don't have the
I
body of work?
that is well, it's all about the network, isn't it? And to do it from absolute nothing with that network is really difficult.
Yeah. So if somebody was to do that, would you advise them to go work for a search firm
Yeah,
and do
definitely.
that?
Build your network, learn your trade, learn how to do it,
Mm.
build relationships. That level is still very relationship driven.
Yeah.
Or I mean,
How
recruitment is
much?
still relationship driven, but I mean that bit even more so.
How did the networking work at that level for you? Like what? Like were you out and about all the time, or?
Yeah, you just have to look. I'm not a search guy, by the way. I've been involved in many searches in my career, but my LMA was never a search business.
No.
But we didn't need to be, and I didn't profess to be. But
A fancy contingent business.
yeah, it was. But the point I'm making now is we're talking about recruitment in today's world.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think there is a big opportunity. If you look at a lot of the successful businesses, they're operating at a more senior end of the market.
Well, so I think that's going to change. So
Do you?
yeah, because if you look at the things that a search firm used to offer compared to a contingent firm, largely it was an elongated process with a few bells and whistles on it. If you're to break it down to the actual science of it. And now those, like, so say market mapping, for example, or tracking things or evaluating things, those
Yeah.
tools were all they were all just for search firms. Now a one-man band contingent person can do all of that there with the different tools that are out there and present it in a lovely way. And all they need is the network to get going.
Yes, but one thing I will say to counter that, and I hear you, is
Outside of confidential searches.
yeah. If you look at the services that a search firm provides, it goes far beyond just filling a job. You know, they're able to provide HR advisory, D&I consulting. They're able to be an
But we can
extension,
do all of that as well. It's
a
just
one
about
man
having
band.
a third party to come in and do it and
Fair
wrapping
enough.
it in a service. Like we do it at Record with recruitment firms. You know, like if we have a learning and development platform for them, we've got tech advisory, we've got direct. If I need a third party, I just wrap it up and put it in. Like
Right. So you almost like
I
subcontract.
subcontract, but i- if you if you wrap it in your own brand, then it looks like a full-on advisory service. So I think that the opportunities out there for us to get more sticky with the end user at all levels of their business, if we win the trust, is
Yeah.
much greater than it was. And I'm not talking about institutional stuff like into the banks, because there's a lot more legacy relationships there. And
And top down, I mean, look, selling now is, I mean, the amount of people I speak to, Jules, where the old methods of a recruiter doing sales have changed so much.
yeah,
And but top down sales is still the best rather than bottom
yeah,
up.
big time.
Like a
Yeah,
million percent. Build your relationships as high up in an organization as you possibly can.
yeah, for sure. So what gets you out of bed now? What do you love about where you're at?
Well, I love what I'm doing with the advisory piece. I mean, 30 years in this industry, there isn't much I haven't encountered. I mean, I've
Yeah,
got the t-shirts for most things that have happened that could happen. So I'm loving working with my portfolio of companies.
yeah.
I'm loving the flexibility that provides me, the variety. I'm loving being able to give back. And yeah, I still love this industry. Look, you know, we've touched on the fact it's going through a period of profound change, and that's just going to continue. But also, we've got to look at that as a really is you know, it's exciting too. You know, because you know we can. Recruitment isn't going away. The industry isn't going away. It's still worth billions and billions and billions a year. We just maybe need to embrace what's happening and do what we need to do in our businesses to ensure that we survive and grow.
What's your predictions for recruitment in 5 years' time?
I think that it's very difficult for me to predict what AI is going to do, Dualta, because I don't think any of us have the answers. It's still so early days. So I really find that question difficult to answer from the impact AI is going to have on our jobs. I just don't know. It's obviously already having an impact from a process point of view, from a TA point of view. Yeah, there's huge amounts of work being done in organizations to procure talent through AI. What that means, I haven't got the answer to that. I think our industry will be slicker. It will be businesses will need to be able to run more efficiently. We would need to run more efficiently. We need to keep our cost base low, and we need to be able to offer a value-add service, and you know, and be able to offer our clients more than just filling a job. I think a lot also depends on the economy. I think, you know, we're 3 years into a downward spiral nearly. I mean, it just seems like it's gone on forever.
It does,
You know,
yeah.
when companies start growing again, which they will, it might all change again. We might go back a bit to how it used to be because there's such a huge amount of requirement coming from customers. I haven't answered your question at all because I don't
No,
really know.
do you know what? The truth is, nobody knows,
I
because
agree.
you couldn't have predicted 5 years ago what today would look like.
Yeah.
And it's like I used to always think the offshore and marketing led, data driven, like I've been beating that drum for a very long time, and it's here now.
Yeah, it
And
is.
but it's also here for bigger businesses as well. So it's I think it'll only continue. Like, obviously, we want to be able to supercharge whoever's in that seat to have as many relationship points as possible, and to not have them doing the admin, and to have them have all the media centered around them. But which is completely different from the black book and the confidential search and being like very discreet. It's the world's definitely changed, and on how we look for jobs and all that as well. All right, so that is us today, Russell. Any last words of wisdom, and where can people find you, and what do you do, and who do you do it for?
Yeah. My last, I mean, look, we're still in a very uncertain economic climate. Obviously, the budget today is probably going to give us some clarity. I think my advice to any owners at the moment, keep strong, be brave, know that the good times will happen.
This shall pass.
Yeah, this shall pass. No, but embrace what's going on. Don't fight against it in terms of right sizing your businesses, ensuring keep a laser focus on cost at the moment. And yeah, if you need my help, then I'm here. You can find me on LinkedIn, Russell Thompson. There aren't that many of us. Ascentia Advisory is my advisory business. I also run a business called Inventum. And my email address is russell@inventum-group.com.
Wonderful, Russell. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Lovely. Thanks, Jules. Good to see you.